guys, Dina here. Welcome and thanks for joining me today. Last week I created a little infinity shaker card using the Autumn Bears stamp set that I recently designed for Gina K Designs. It was so much fun and really super cute, easy to make, so I thought today I would create another one using another one of the little bears from the same stamp set, just in different colors. You can see this style of shaker card is not bulky at all, and it's really not scary. Some of the other shaker cards, there's so many parts to it. This is super easy. So today I thought I'd show you how I do it. I'm going to start off with the Delicate Flowers Layering Stencil by Gina K Designs. I put a little dot at the top of the petal because I want to be able to line up my stencils. So the way I did that was Gina has her logo imprinted at the bottom of her layering stencils. So I put them together and I put a dot at the top of one of the petals and then switch the stencils and put another dot at the other top of the petals. So this way when I switch them out, I'm able to line up the petals perfectly. So here I'm coming in with some sweet corn, which is like a very pretty muted yellow ink. And because I'm going to make sunflowers today, I wanted to add a little bit of brown to it. So I'm using Sandy Beach to add a little dimension to the edges of the flower and for the center of each flower. And this is a little detail brush that I had. It'd be great to add these little tiny details because the bigger brushes just you'll get too much coverage. You don't want to do that. So I'm not going to leave this brown. I'm going to add a little bit of sweet mango to brighten up my sunflowers, mostly to the center of the top of the flower. And I'm going to repeat this process for each one of my sunflowers. I'm like just lightly going around and adding a little bit of color. Okay, so now I'm going to just turn the petals because I don't want them all facing in the same direction. It will just look too uniform and too unnatural. So I'm turning the petals around and I'm just going to repeat the color process that I did on the first flower. Sunflowers are just so perfect for your autumn projects. We used to live in Tennessee and one of my neighbors had a sunflower garden. And honestly, I have never seen sunflowers so huge in my entire life. I don't know how tall they stood, but they stood a lot taller than my husband, which was 6 feet, just over 6 feet. Absolutely stunning. And they would harvest them and use the seeds. So here's my third one. Now I turn the petals again. I don't want to go to the edge because I'm going to wind up cutting this panel. I had a few little reminders to use the masking on this stencil because I actually went off the side on one of them, but you won't see it at all because like I said, I'm going to be cutting it out. I'm going to cut this panel out. And so this is just the exact same process as the other two flowers that I did. A little bit of sweet corn, a little bit of Sandy Beach, and a little bit of sweet mango. It almost looks like I forgot to put sweet mango on the third one. But that's okay because we're going to use sweet mango on the bottom. So here now I'm putting on the second layer. I put it behind the first layer and lined it up and then removed the first layered stencil to have my bottom layer perfectly in place. I'm sure there's lots of ways to do this, but this particular stencil worked for me this way. So try it if you want. Otherwise, you know, you may know of a better way. Or some stencils actually will give you more of a guide. But this was easy. It worked out fine. I had that little bit of pop of orange behind the yellow petals. And again, I'm just going to repeat this process for all 3 flowers. Just coming in with some sweet mango. This is also a really nice color because it's not too vibrant, but it's still bright and cheerful. I have to be careful too because I have a little bit of a heavy hand. So I'll start off real light and then I'll just put a little bit more pressure as I go. Now for my third one, I need a little extra masking here because there's a little corner that we have to cover. And again, just adding that little pop of color behind these sunflowers make all the difference. In the first one I used pinks and yellows. Here I'm using oranges and yellows. So I want to leave that space in the bottom left. There's the panel. Because I'm going to be putting my images there. And here I'm just going to die cut it out with a stitch panel from Gina K's Master Layouts 2. It's one of my favorite master layouts. It works perfectly for an A2 card. Okay, so now it's time to color. I'm gonna lay in my base color for this little bear. I stamped him on marker paper with premium black onyx dye ink, also from Gina K. And the reason I'm putting my base color down first is it helps in blending my other colors, and I'm not someone who loves dark shadows, so I prefer to work light and build up. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I just lay in my base and I add my mid-tone, and then I'll come in and smooth that out a little bit. Now, for the ears I used a little bit of a darker color, but for the face I went a little bit warmer actually for the face. I didn't want his face too dark. So I came in with another mid-tone that I'm going to be using for the rest of his little body. And I'm just defining some shadows here. The shadows are always going to be more defined when there's something overlapping it rather than if there's just light coming towards one side. So I'm trying to, like when I'm on doing his face, I'm just pulling out some hair and just making the contour of his face. But when I'm adding shadows on his little belly and his feet, it's covered by his sweater, so I'm making those shadows just a little bit deeper. Here I'm coming back in with my base color, and I'm just going to smooth out some of the shadows that I've already created. And I want to define his little snout. This is a process that I think I adopted from when I used to do oil paintings and acrylic painting. I always laid in a base color and just built up from there. I think that's why I have more struggle with watercolors, because it's opposite. So here's my darkest color, and I'm just defining some wisps of hair and creating some definition along his face so that you know he's a furry little guy. But I don't want to like put it all over his face because you don't want to overwhelm his face actually. I had an art teacher who told me to draw a pine tree. And I tried to draw all the little pine needles, and she reminded me that, yes, you know they're there, but you are not going to see them when you look at it. You'll just see like clusters. So I always try to remember that when I'm doing hair too. So here I'm adding some warm colors because I'm going to make this little guy come to life with his rosy little cheeks. So this is like a pinkish tone that I added to his little ears just for cuteness. And I'm going to make his cute little chubby pink cheeks. So this is my mid-tone. I already laid my base, my light base pink down. And this little bit of pink just brings his little self to life. You start to watch him develop. That's like so exciting to me when I'm coloring or drawing, is to watch something start to come to life. You can just kind of see his personality as you pop these colors out. And I'm just gonna, just then I was smoothing out the mid-tone that I had just put on, and now I'm just adding just a tiny bit of my darkest color, just ever so slightly, and I'm going to smooth that out as well with my lightest color. This keeps his cheeks rosy but not overwhelming. You can see him. You can see his smile getting brighter and brighter now. I gotta get that little nose in there before I forget. I usually would make a little pink nose, but because he's a bear, I'm gonna make his little nose brown. Add a little bit of shading. Okay, so let's work on the pumpkins. I'm using some warm colors here as well, some yellow reds here for the pumpkins. I just love this time of year. I think fall has to be probably my most favorite season, even though I'm definitely a warm climate girl. I absolutely love the fall so much. We lived in New York when I was growing up, and we had this little tradition when we were children that every fall we would take a ride upstate. And most people think of New York as the city of New York. We lived in the suburbs, but we would take a ride upstate. And if you've never been upstate New York, I don't know how it is now because I haven't been there in many, many years, but if you ever rode upstate New York, it was all filled with rolling hills and farmland. It was absolutely beautiful. So every fall we had this tradition where my parents would take us upstate, and we would stop at this little roadside farm where we would all get to pick our own pumpkin. There was 4 of us. We got to pick our own pumpkin. And when we were done, we would go through the fields and we get to choose them. We didn't pick them right off the shelf. We actually were able to go through the pumpkin fields and pick out our own pumpkin. And when we finished, they had a little cafe of sorts on the side where they would make homemade pumpkin donuts and fresh squeezed apple cider. And that would be our biggest treat. We would get our pumpkin and then we'd sit outside in the cool autumn air and eat our warm donuts and drink our apple cider before we would head home. And it's one of my fondest childhood memories, and I always think of that during the fall season because the air was so clean and crisp and cool. So I've always had a love of pumpkins and fall and that entire season. But when we lived in Tennessee, gosh, I have never seen the most beautiful colors in my life. You would see rows and rows of mountains with layers upon layers of gorgeous fall colors. Stunning. So anyway, back to my pumpkins. My color process is always the same. I will lay out my base color. I will come in with my mid-tone. I will add my shadow color and come back again with my base color to smooth everything out. And that's exactly what I've done here with my little pumpkins. I didn't want to make them too orangey because sometimes that looks a little bit unnatural. Not that this is realistic, this is just cute and whimsical, but I'm still trying to keeping it real, people. So now I want to add a pop of color to this little guy. So I'm going to color his scarf in a blue tone. Blues are definitely one of my favorite colors, actually, because it reminds me of the water. And you can see I just colored over a little bit of his sweater, but it's okay because I'm using alcohol markers and they are translucent, so you are able to cover up mistakes, change colors, and even create colors with alcohol markers. So by the time I'm finished with this, you will never know that I started to color his sweater blue. It'll be completely covered up. So again here, light color, base, mid-tones, and now I'm going to smooth it out, add a little bit more shadow, not too much because I want to keep his scarf bright. I'm just going to smooth it out now with my base color. Pulling out the little ripples and wrinkles in his scarf. Okay, now I'm going to work on his sweater, and I'm going to cover up that little spot on his sleeve. See, you already can't even tell I did that. And I wanted to add a little bit darker color because I wanted the pumpkin to pop. I didn't want it to get lost in, his body with his sweater, so I wanted to add some contrast there. So I'm using some darker browns, staying within the autumn color feel. Just adding some shadows. And if you have a color wheel, or if you want to figure out what colors work best together, these colors are on the opposite spectrum of each other, so that's why they look so good together. Blues and oranges, they're just so pretty together. So I'm coming in with a very dark, just to define some of the shadows. Like, remember I was saying, if something is overlapping, it's going to be darker than if light was just hitting one side or the other. So I just wanted to pull out just a little bit deeper there with the darkest color, and again, smooth it out. I think that's what I love about alcohol markers, is that you can just blend so easily. It's almost like painting, which is how I started, really. So now I'm going to work on the leaves. I'm using a yellow-green color because I've got a lot of yellows in my coloring already. So I'm just trying to stay cohesive. But I don't want the leaves to be super bright. Forgot a piece of his scarf there. I don't want the leaves to be super bright, so I'm going to mute them down a little bit with some of the colors I used in the pumpkin. Because leaves in the fall are not very bright green. They start turning. So these leaves are starting to turn. So I'm adding a little bit of yellow red. Not a lot. I don't want to change the color of the green. I just want to mute it down a little bit. and just blend it out. And then I'm just going to come back in with a little bit of green just to make sure it doesn't get lost in the pumpkin. Defining those very darks on his sweater. Now I'm going to use my jelly roll. I use a jelly roll number 10 for the highlights. I almost always do this. I think it's just so cute and makes everything pop. I won't be putting the jelly roll on his fur because that just wouldn't make sense. But I normally do the cheeks. I forgot to do it here, but I do go back and do it after I'm finished. You want to put your highlights on smooth, you know, if you're going to use a jelly roll or something like that, you want to put it on areas that would normally be smooth. So you really wouldn't put that on his fur. I mean, certainly you can. It's your project. You can do whatever you want. But normally, you probably wouldn't do that. Now, I left one of the pumpkins out because I had some kind of fabric on something on my stamp and it messed up, but I didn't need it anyway. So now I'm going to cut it out. These are the coordinating dies that come with the bundle set for the Autumn Bears. And I'm using my magnetic plate, so I don't need to use any tape. And there it is. Okay, so here's my components. This is what I'm going to put together. And now I'm going to be working on the shaker. So I've got a piece of plastic that I used for the shaker cover. This plastic comes from a stamp set that I took out, and I'm sure y'all have some of this laying around somewhere. But if you don't, there's companies out there that are starting to make these shaker covers for these flat infinity shaker cards. I think Pink and Maine does it, and possibly Waffle Flower, but I'll be putting some links below for you, and you can check that out. So what I did was I cut it down so I have an overlap all the way around my panel. This way I can fold it over. So I'm going to do the bottom first. You can cut the corners off at first time before you start this process, but I wanted to make sure all my sides were kind of even, so I wanted to tape down my bottom panel first, and now I'm going to cut the corners off for easy folding. But you can cut the corners off first if it helps you. I just wasn't fully confident that I wouldn't move my plastic, so I did the bottom first. It wasn't a big deal. And now I'm going to tape only 3 sides because I need to leave the pocket to fill with my shaker bits. Okay, so I've cut all the corners off now. And I'm just using a tape roll. This is Gina K's. I like it because it gives me a chance to reposition stuff if I need to, and then it becomes permanent, so it's awesome. Okay, so these are the 3 sides, and they're down, they're secure. I just want to make sure my card's not too bent. I left the top open so I can put my shaker bits in. And I'm using, these are like flat little sequins or confetti, whatever you want to call them, but they're kind of flat. And the thing I love about them is you saw I was pouring orange ones in there, but as the light hits it, it picks up all kinds of colors, and it just is so pretty. Like, you can get all these colors without having to put so much bulk in there. So I didn't even put that much in there, but it was enough to make the shaker. So now I'm going to put my panel on a piece of brown cardstock as a frame. And it also helps, you know, make sure everything's secured down. So there goes my head. So I have to position that and try to get a perfect frame all the way around. And there it is. And so there's enough room in there with this technique that the shakers just move around freely. And I'm going to use a blue card base. This is blue cardstock, also by Gina K. And again, I'm going to put the links down below for you. And I'm just going to attach that to the card base. I wanted to use blue because it helps to pick up the other color that I used on the little bear scarf. It's always good to repeat a color. It helps with your design to repeat a color. So I wanted to repeat that blue to coordinate with my little bear. See? So I'm going to put them on the outside of the shaker. The reason being, you don't want them to get lost amongst the shaker bits. So and because it's flat, it's just super easy. Just set them on the outside. I got my little bear, and now I'm going to figure out, I want one pumpkin in front of the other, and I want to make sure that the one set's a little bit behind. So I'm going to put the front one in first, but I only glued half of it so that I can slip the second pumpkin behind it. This way it gives it like a little perspective, little dimension. So I set him back just a little bit further. And there they are. And then I put my sentiment on, and these are the two cards together, the one I made last week and the one that we just made today. And that was super fun, easy, quick. It actually was quick, right? And that would definitely bring a smile to someone's face, don't you think? Well, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for watching. If I've helped you at all, or if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a like and subscribe, and hit the notify button if you want to see when I make my next video. And if there's anything you'd like to see that I haven't included, please let me know in the comments. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.